great memory for me, and to hear someone try and dirty it up in that way, the way they're trying to twist it as if my uncle came and said, hey, I'm just going to start ripping off clothes. That's farthest from the truth. There's plenty of people there, that witnessed everything, that would back up, my story or my uncle's story if he was alive. But at the same time, this guy who basically is just guessing what happened at the photo shoot by pictures. What gets me upset is just people, outside people, judging my uncle without knowing the scenario. One thing I do want to say is, people like that just, on the outside, and he's supposed to be a professional, and you hear him, he sounds giddy. He sounds like someone that is just spiteful and hateful. And it's those kind of people, they need something in their life. They really do. Leave our family alone.
You never done things and it was missing in your life, you can just go back to do it. And Mike just liked to just have great fun, and the stuff he liked to do, adults don't like doing that.
I think he had more fun hanging out with just everyday people that you didn't even know who they were. Either they were local people or tourists or whatever. And he didn't know who they were. He just meet them and talk to them and get to know them a little bit. Hey, want to come out to the ranch?
You were invited to Michael Jackson's Neverland before.
It was amazing. I've been there probably 8 times. I spent the night. The first time I ever went was actually the time I spent the night. He walked us through his entire house. His bedroom, his memorabilia room, bathrooms, every place in his house. We were telling him how beautiful it was, and he was like, "You've never been here before?" And my friends and I looked at each other like, no, we sure haven't. When would we have been here, So he would invite, if there were fans sitting outside, he would see us and tell Violet, who was security, to let us in. And he would just let us do whatever.
So that speaks volume to just how easily he trusts people to come into his life even.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he trusted a lot of people he shouldn't have trusted in his life.
Is that, they go, oh, you slept in the same bedroom as him. It's I don't think you understand. Michael Jackson's bedroom is 2 stories. And it has 3 bathrooms and this and that. So when I slept in his bedroom, yeah, but you have to understand the whole scenario. And the thing is with Michael is that he's not very good at explaining himself. And he never really has been.
Michael Jackson, his bedroom was 2 stories, so when you first walked in, I didn't realize at first it was his bedroom because his bed wasn't there on the bottom floor, but it was kind of very cluttered with a lot of things. I actually sat on his bed, and he was just kind of talking about Neverland to us, and that was surreal.
Michael was going to Miami. So myself and a couple of friends flew in from Europe to spend some time with him. And before he had to go, he told us that we could stay and that we could enjoy Neverland as much as we wanted. While the ranch manager took us to the main house, he told me that Michael had said to give us the royal treatment. And we sure got the royal treatment. When we went up to the main house, all the staff were lined up on the stairs welcoming us, and they told us that we could move around as freely as we wanted to. There were no places that were off limits.
And this was 16 years ago, so it's been a while, but I just remember being completely in shock the whole time. Most people can't believe that he let us in his house like that.
Several weeks later, after we'd already come back to classes after 9/11, I was working as a work study in the music department, so he came in to register for private guitar lessons. He always carried his guitar with him everywhere he went. And we had a nice conversation. He remembered me from our program meeting. We had a little chat, exchanged pleasantries, and he gave me his form. And as I went to register him for these private lessons, I saw his name for the first time, which was Jordan Chandler. And I believe he told me his first name, but I didn't know his last name at that point. And when I saw Jordan Chandler on a piece of paper, I couldn't quite place it then either. It just sounded very, very familiar. And keep in mind, at the time, Jordan Chandler's name wasn't widely known because in the U.S., alleged crimes of sex abuse, particularly when they're minors, are very protected. But I went online and I asked Jeeves, dating myself, and I suddenly realized that he was in fact the first accuser from 1993.
So Evan Chandler and June Chandler, or originally June Wan, had a child named Jordan Chandler who turns out to be the first alleged victim. June Chandler divorced Evan Chandler and married a man named David Schwartz. Charles, can you tell me about Evan Chandler?
So, Evan Chandler was born in New York. He was actually born Evan Chalmers, but he wanted a career as a screenwriter. So he moved to California and changed his name from Chalmers to Chandler because he thought that Chalmers was too Jewish sounding. He became a dentist, but he didn't really enjoy it and also was not really very good at it. He was censured by the regulatory board for shoddy work. He was also accused at one point of sexually assaulting a female patient while he was working on her. He had a very kind of a brief career as a screenwriter. He got a screenwriting credit around 1993 on the film Robin Hood Men in Tights.
We're men in tights. We roam around the forest looking for lights.
Apparently he was working on Mel Brooks when he came up with the Men in Tights idea, or he said his son came up with the Men in Tights idea. This is the same 13-year-old boy. And apparently, maybe Mel was under some kind of ether anesthetic, but he decided it was a great idea and went along with the dentist, and they put the movie together. I would imagine a dentist to the stars would be exposed to a lot of the glamour in Hollywood. He can see his successful customers talking on the phone, making deals, and it looks so easy to someone on the outside, and he figured he wanted to get a little piece of the pie and get, stop drilling teeth and maybe become a producer and really make some big bucks.
So Michael Jackson is in Los Angeles with some of his team, and they're driving along Wilshire Boulevard in Beverly Hills, and the car breaks down. There's a lady in the area who sees Michael Jackson stranded by the side of the road and calls her husband, who works at a business called Rent-A-Wreck, which is a car rental business. Rent-A-Wreck is owned by Dave Schwartz. So Dave Schwartz calls his wife June because he knows that Jordan Chandler, her son, is a massive Michael Jackson fan. There was one employer at Rent-A-Wreck who said that when June arrived, she was kind of forcing Geordie on Michael Jackson, almost like trying to emotionally blackmail him. So that's how the numbers got exchanged, and they ended up staying in touch.
So a friendship develops between Michael Jackson and the Chandler family, excluding Evan Chandler. During this period, Michael Jackson would have stayovers at their house. They would come over and sleep over at Michael Jackson's house. Where is Evan Chandler during this period of time?
Evan Chandler was pretty much an absent father. He owed almost $70,000 in unpaid child support. He had been rowing with June about how infrequently he was seeing his son. She was trying to get Evan to take Jordan more often, and he was refusing. He had his own new family, like June did. He'd remarried and had kids with another lady, and they were struggling to get Evan to engage with Geordie. It was not until he discovered that his son was now friends with Michael Jackson that he suddenly became interested in seeing him again.
My recollection was that he was not very interested in Geordie prior to the time that Geordie took up with Michael, and as soon as Geordie took up with Michael, Evan became the most interested parent in the world.
They seemed to be getting on quite well. Evan even at one point asked him to build an extra wing onto the house so he could come and stay more often. And then when that idea didn't work, he said, well, I've got a better idea. Why don't you just build me a new house?
and then that didn't happen either. June dropped the bombshell that she and Geordie were thinking of going on tour with Michael, and then Evan, who previously had been an absent father and wasn't paying his child support and wasn't really interested in seeing his son at all of a sudden became enraged about the idea that Geordie would be out of the country for a few months, and that was when the relationship really took a dramatic turn towards the negative. What happened was Evan had begun making strange comments and threats to June and Dave and Geordie about Michael that he was going to make allegations. He was behaving so erratically that they feared he was going to do something crazy. So the next time they spoke to him on the phone, they tape recorded him.
This man.
It's amazing. He's talking about motorcycle insurance, and people love it.
You deserve to save.
I deserve to save.
I mean, he has a way of making you feel seen.
Bundle car and motorcycle insurance at geico.com.
Don't you just love Vacation You? So easygoing. So fun. So funny. Way more into fruit than regular you is.
I'm making more smoothies!
Just sipping hot cocoa from your new special elk monks all day long.
We're not going snowshoeing.
So how about Evolve deals with all that vacation rental stuff? And Vacation You can stay focused on. You get it.
Man is going to be humiliated beyond belief. I will not believe it. He will not believe what's going to happen. Beyond his worst nightmares. Sell one more record. If I go through with this, I win big time. I will get everything I want. They will be destroyed forever. That's a fact, Dave. That's what's going to happen. Does that help? Michael's career will be over. Does that help, Jordan? Michael's career will be over. And does that help, Jordan? That's irrelevant to me.
He's talking about how he's furious that Michael has stopped phoning him and stopped taking his calls, and how Michael has stolen his ex-wife and torn the family apart, and how he's plotting his revenge. And he says that everything is moving in accordance with a plan that's not just mine. And this telephone conversation occurred before Geordie Chandler made any allegations against Michael Jackson. And in this phone call, Evan Chandler alludes to a nasty attorney.
This attorney I found, I interviewed several, and I picked the nastiest son of a bitch I could find. Once I make that phone call, this guy is just going to destroy everybody in sight. Any devious, nasty, cruel way that he can do it. And I've given him full authority to do that. It'll be a massacre if I don't get what I want.
And that attorney turns out to be Barry Rothman.
My name is Geraldine Hughes. I was the legal secretary in 1993 for Barry Rothman, who was the attorney of Evan Chandler, the first accuser that came against Michael on child molestation. I was working for him. He hired me, and I came in for an interview one day, and he hired me for the job as his legal secretary. I was the only legal secretary for him. He was really an entertainment attorney, and he had a history of being a good negotiator in the entertainment field, though. Whenever Evan would call Barry Rothman's office, Barry Rothman would tell us to put the call on hold, and he'd walk all the way back to his office, shut the door, and that's how he took all of Evan's calls. He was the only client he did that for. Anybody else call, if he was away from his office, he'd just pick up the phone and say, okay, woo, say what he had to say, and then he'd hang up. But he didn't do that with Evan. Evan was always behind closed doors.
Evan had already retained a lawyer. Geordie Chandler was insisting that Michael had never touched him. Anthony Pellicano, who is Michael's private investigator, goes around to interview Geordie Chandler and questions him for about an hour, I believe, and asks him all sorts of questions and very direct questions. Have you ever seen Michael Jackson naked? Have you ever been naked in a bed with Michael Jackson? Has he ever touched you? Etc., etc. And Geordie Chandler says no to everything. At the end of the conversation, Geordie Chandler reiterates that Michael has never done anything wrong to him and says that his dad is just trying to get money.
It started out a custody issue. Evan Chandler wanted the custody of Geordie because in order to coerce a child into saying something that's not true, you need time with that